5, evaluate organizational issues. Now, let me introduce this by saying if you've been in the same school or even the same district for a number of years, the tendency is to begin to think that the way you do things in your school is the way they're done nationwide. For example, if you're in a school that has, or a district that has 3 recesses, a morning recess, an after lunch recess, and an afternoon recess, the tendency is to think, isn't that what they do nationwide? Wrong. There are a lot of districts in this nation that only take 1 short recess break after lunch, and that's it with elementary kids. And other than that, the teacher schedules their own bathroom breaks, drink breaks, etc. So what I want to say is, you should view some of those organizational things not as, oh, this is the way we do it in this school, so isn't that the way they do it, and must that not be right? I want you to open yourselves way up and say, hey, is this working the way we want it to? Some things I would encourage you to think about. Number 1, how many supervisors do you need out there? And I wish I could give you a number. No more than X number of children per 1 adult. I can't do that because it depends partially on your physical space. The bigger your physical space is and the more complex your physical space is, the more supervisors you need. One school I worked in, very small school, there weren't more than probably about 70 kids on the playground at any given time. And they had only 1 supervisor, which numbers-wise doesn't sound too bad, but it was an L-shaped playground around the building. And there was no way 1 supervisor could visually scan the entire playground, no matter where she was, unless she only stayed here, and then she's not moving about the playground enough. They needed 2 supervisors, even though it was a small number of kids. Also, if you're in a school where there is a lot of anger on the part of the kids because of the pain they're going through in their lives, that anger is going to be reflected on the playground, and we need more adults out there to supervise, and we need to concentrate more on teaching them conflict resolution skills as well. Determine if your recesses are too long. There are many schools that give the children an hour for lunch. We all know that a lot of elementary kids, particularly many of your intermediate kids, snarf down their lunch within 5 minutes. And then they're out there, and if they are out there for 55 minutes, that is just flat out too long. Your distractible kids will be involved in an activity for about 15, maybe if you're lucky 20 minutes, and then they go looking for something else to do. And for a number of them, it's going to be causing problems. So if you tighten down on the length of time or shorten down on the length of time that kids are out there, then that may solve some of the problems as well. You can evaluate that, by the way, by just asking, do the majority of the severe problems happen at the end of recess? If they do, then that should be a question that you ask yourself. C, decide if all recesses are free and open or if some should be structured. One school that I worked with outside of San Diego has a wonderful structure. It was an immense amount of work on the part of one of the classroom teachers, but one of the classroom teachers, primary level teacher, trained groups of intermediate kids in how to manage games for primary kids, and in the morning recess, all kids are required, all primary children are required to be in one of about 12 different games that are going on that are being supervised by these intermediate kids. It's a wonderful structure. When I looked at this same school during their afternoon recess, you know what I saw? 95% of the kids are in one or more of these games because they're finding it's fun and they're learning the rules of the game, they're learning the social skills for getting along with dealing with disagreements about calls, etc. D, decide if your school needs or could benefit from some form of restricted recess. Some examples might include, if you have a number of kids that have been having chronic problems, they can be assigned to be in a limited physical space. You must be on the sawdust area for the next 2 weeks. You're not allowed out of the sawdust area, and then one of the supervisors spends the majority of his or her time in that area. And by limiting the physical space, you limit the number of problems they might get into by reducing the distance between them and a supervisor. Some schools have gone to social skills training recesses. One of the best structures is, again, in some of these schools outside of San Diego in Cajon Valley, California, that I've worked with. They run social skills recesses. Kids will be assigned for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month to be with either the school counselor or a highly trained aide who is working with 5, maybe 8, maybe 10 kids. And during the recess, they're not allowed free recess. They're doing an activity with this person who's teaching them social skills, teaching them how to get involved in the game. If they're not in that game and they want to get involved, teaching them how to deal with, disagreements about calls and so on and so forth. And then 3, student assigned to a limited time for recess. Now, many schools try to do this, and there's such a common sense solution to it. Many schools will try to say, well, hey, this kid really has problems at recess, so we're only going to give him for now 5 minutes of recess, and he needs to build up longer recesses. And the problem I invariably hear is Now, but we send him out for that 5 minutes and it just doesn't work because he doesn't come back. Well, I probably wouldn't either. You give it to them at the end of that 15 minutes. If you're keeping them in somewhere, then you send them out for the last 5 minutes of recess so you don't have to try and get that kid to come back. Step 6, and we're getting real close to the end here, prepare a supervision manual. I feel like you should have a manual for your playground supervisors that specifies the rules and expectations, and this is exactly the same material that the teachers are teaching the kids from, specifies the consequences for infractions, specifies reinforcement procedures and supervision responsibilities. Look for just a moment at page 9, and something that we haven't talked about very much, and I want to talk about for just a moment, is the idea of reinforcement procedures. You need to think about how are we going to positively reinforce children for behavior on the playground. Some schools, in fact, one person that I talked with before we started this session says at their school they've made up these little coin-type things that they give the kids just as positive reinforcers, and the kids will take those into their classroom, and the classroom teacher might do some kind of reinforcement with that, like a drawing at the end of the week. That's a good idea. Some schools have little coupons or passes that they give to kids that say, here's a Tiger Award. We're the Tigers, and you did an excellent job. And you can do the informal things, too, like are listed here. Announcements over the intercom from the principal and playground supervisor going around the classrooms. Hey, Miss Johnson, we just wanted to let you know, and all the students in your room know, that your students are great on the playground. They're a real model for the other students. We need to keep that flow of positive feedback going to kids so that they know that following the rules is critical and important. The other things on here you can pretty much look through and get ideas on your own. Pages 10 and 11 are blanks for you to fill in these documents. And working with your staff right at the beginning of the school year on these issues can be very helpful. Let me conclude this session just by saying that in laying the groundwork for this, we're trying to make sure that, number one, the playground is reasonably physically safe, that we've taught the expectations to kids and that we're all teaching the exact same content. We've developed crisis management situations, developing the lines of communication. We've established consequences for misbehavior, and then we're pre-thinking about designing basically a job description for our supervisors. Thank you very much.